Before the word MMO even existed in the mainstream, a small group of developers were already experimenting with something radical: persistent online worlds. Not just games you played, but places you lived in. The earliest MMOs were messy, janky, and unforgiving, but they were also magical. In 1997, Ultimate Online launched, and that was essentially the first real mainstream MMORPG. It wasn't just about slaying dragons, it was about being someone in a world where your actions mattered. If you built a house, it stayed there. If you mined ore, someone else could buy it off of you. If you killed a player, their corpse remained. And most importantly, when you logged out, the world kept going. That was the hook. In a time when most games reset the moment you quit, MMOs offered something closer to a second life. MMOs weren't just systems, they were social experiments. EverQuest forced players into group dungeons. If your party wiped, the penalty wasn't just dying, it could mean losing hours of progress or even items. But that pain forged something most games today struggle to replicate: dependence. You needed other people, not because the game said so, but because survival demanded it. Your guild wasn't optional, it was your lifeline. Communities formed out of necessity, then evolved into culture, forums, rivalries, drama, friendships, even in-game marriages. These weren't just player bases, they were becoming societies. MMOs were born from a perfect storm of technological breakthroughs. The rise of broadband internet, advances in server client architecture, and affordable PCs that could actually run 3D environments in real time. And most crucially, the subscription model. You paid monthly not to own a product but to live in a world. That gave developers steady income, which meant they could afford massive teams and constant updates. It was the earliest form of what we now call a live service game. Early MMOs weren't just games to beat, they were designed to never end. There was no final boss, no credits, no closure. Instead, the goal was growth: a higher level, a better item, a bigger house, a stronger guild. Some players ran shops and never fought at all. Others became pirates, thieves, or peacekeepers. Entire roles emerged, unwritten by the devs but enforced by the community. MMOs were the first genre to really ask, what if a game never ended and you just kept living in it? But while these early worlds felt infinite, something was about to change. The moment MMOs truly went mainstream, they would gain something they never had before: polish. And in doing so, they would lose something else: their wild, unpredictable soul. In 2004, World of Warcraft didn't just release. It absolutely detonated. It took the fragile, chaotic ideas of early MMOs and distilled them into something smoother, more focused, and most importantly, playable by everyone. And that polish didn't just elevate the genre, it set the ceiling. World of Warcraft was not the first MMO. It didn't even try to be the most innovative one. What Blizzard did was take in the intimidating depth of EverQuest and the social chaos of Ultima Online and the browser accessibility of RuneScape and stitch them into something elegant, readable, and addictive. It was the first MMO that could give you quests with clear objectives and rewards, use minimaps and glowing icons to reduce friction, offering smooth combat animations and a very well designed user interface. Included instance dungeons, so you weren't competing for the same content. World of Warcraft didn't just welcome MMO veterans, it opened the door for millions of players who had never touched the genre before. And at its peak, World of Warcraft had over 12 million subscribers. Let that number sink in. In 2009, there was more than the population of Belgium. It was a cultural moment. Suddenly, South Park was doing World of War parodies. Mr. T and Ozzy Osbourne were in commercials. Everyone knew someone who was playing World of Warcraft. Guilds became family, raids became rituals. Your main wasn't just a character, it was who you were online. But this was also the moment things began to crystallize, because World of Warcraft had worked, and that success created a new fear in the industry: fear of changing the formula. World of Warcraft's core design revolved around controlled experiences. Go to this quest hub, kill 10 boars, level up, and repeat the process. It was called a theme park model because it felt like riding carefully constructed attractions. You could see the next ride, but you had to wait in line, follow the signs and stay on the track. Now compare that to other MMOs where you might wander into the wrong forest and you get murdered by skeletons twice your level. The industry loved the theme park. Why? Because it was predictable. You could budget it, market it, and monetize it. After World of Warcraft, everyone tried to make the next big MMO. The results were a flood of ambitious, expensive, and often doomed projects. We got projects like Rift, Wildstar, Terra, Ion, Warhammer Online, Star Wars The Old Republic. Most of them launched strong with solid mechanics and gorgeous art, but they followed the World of Warcraft blueprints too closely. Quest hubs, loot treadmills, level-based progression, and end-game raids. The MMO landscape became a sea of familiarity, and the audience, once starved for adventure, began to lose interest. And even World of Warcraft itself became a victim of its own design. Expansion after expansion, layered new systems on top of the old ones, daily quests, reputation grinds, gear scores, borrowed power, raid tiers. The sense of wonder kinda began to fade, replaced by optimization. Players stopped exploring and started min-maxing. It became a second job, not a second life. And for new players, the barrier to entry became overwhelming. You weren't joining a fresh, mysterious world anymore. You were stepping into the late stage of an aging empire, filled with rules you didn't understand and histories you hadn't lived through. World of Warcraft brought MMOs to the world, and in doing so, it locked the genre inside of its own shadow. The next generation of MMOs would inherit the audience, the expectations, and the burden of living up to a golden age they could never truly recreate. The peak of MMOs wasn't a single moment, it was a plateau, a high point so many games reached, only to find there was nowhere left to go. And then, just as suddenly as they rose, MMOs began to shrink. Not all at once, but slowly, quietly, and inevitably. After World of Warcraft, publishers didn't want innovation, they wanted a guaranteed hit. And to them, World of Warcraft was the blueprint, but here's the truth, you can't build a future by chasing the past. Most post-World of Warcraft MMOs were expensive, safe, and hollow. Big launches with flashy trailers and celebrity voice actors, servers overloaded at first, then silent 6 months later. Promises of massive worlds, but nothing to do in them that we hadn't already done. These games weren't worlds, they were templates, reskinned theme parks with different armor sets. Audiences noticed, and worse, they got tired. MMOs demanded time, not just hours but schedules, weekly raids, daily logins, seasonal resets. If you missed a day, you fell behind, and for a while, that was the appeal, having a role that you needed. But as real life sped up, work, school, social media, players started asking, why am I committing so much time to a game that feels like a second job? And what used to feel like a fantasy lifestyle started to feel like a chore list with better graphics. The grinds, once a badge of honor, became a red flag. And of course, you're competing in the gaming scene. New genres were emerging faster, flashier, and less demanding. League of Legends offered competitive mastery in 30-minute sessions. Call of Duty Battlefield brought action to lobbies of millions. Fortnite, PUBG, Apex Legends gave players social chaos without subscriptions or time sinks. These games didn't ask for loyalty, they gave you freedom. In contrast, MMOs felt slow, rigid, and old-fashioned. These games didn't ask for loyalty, they gave you freedom. And while MMOs were struggling to modernize, the rest of the gaming world was sprinting forward. MMOs were built on community, but the way we socialize online has changed. In the early 2000s, your guild was your friend group. You had forums, voice chat servers, in-jokes, traditions. But over time, Discord replaced guild halls, Twitter replaced global chats, and Reddit replaced their forums. MMO social structures used to be necessary, now they're just another tab you might not bother opening. The magic of logging into a world full of people you knew, it's been replaced by matchmaking, pings, and LFG spam. And when the social glue wears off, what's left of it? Ironically, as MMOs became popular, they started feeling less alive. Instance dungeons, separated groups, facing meant you couldn't see your friends unless you were on the same quest. Fast travel killed the need to explore. The world that once felt infinite and interconnected slowly turned into a series of curated boxes, and without the sense of place, the MMO lost its most powerful illusion, that it was real and that you lived there. Subscriptions declined, developers moved on to free-to-play and microtransactions, and with that came pay-to-win mechanics, cash shops filled with convenience items, and time-gated progression unless you paid. The genre that once promised adventure now felt like a trap, not a world to explore but a storefront to endure. Players who had once fought together against world-ending bosses were now comparing who bought which mount bundle. The soul of a genre, ownership, immersion, community, was being sold off piece by piece. MMOs didn't collapse in a crash, they eroded slowly and silently. They were built to be forever games, but nothing lasts forever. Nothing lasts forever.
Wait, maybe they do.